Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you a demo of the Abrantix Level 3 player together with the UL brand test tool. The Abrantix Level 3 player can automatically play EMV Level 3 certification tests that are stored in the UL brand test tool, and we can do this by using the Abrantix terminal testing robot and a few other components that I'm going to show you. First, I will quickly show you the setup that I'm using. Then I'm going to talk a bit about how the tests can actually be automated and how we tailor the solution for different terminals. And then there will be a demo in the end of an actual test. So the setup looks as follows. We have, of course, what you can see here is the Level 3 player application. And we have the brand test tool application using the UL automation interface, which is currently active and running. Then I'll show you with this webcam. Obviously, we have the dongle for the UL brand test tool. And then here, plugged in over USB, is the UL brand test tool car probe, which goes into this socket, which is connected with a cable to the robot. Then we have the probe that routes the cards into the terminal. And finally, we have, of course, the terminal and the robot that do the automated testing. So how do we automate these tests? So firstly, we have to integrate with different terminals. So for example, in one terminal might be a POS integrated terminal where we need to simulate a POS to start a transaction. Other terminals might be standalone or autonomous, as they call it in some markets, where a transaction has to be started over the keyboard. And then we need to look at some screen data sometimes, or at some EMV data that comes out of the terminal. And to do this, we have a modular setup, as you can see in this picture. So the blue is the Level 3 player, and then we have extensions, for example, a webcam, or the robot, or the brand test tool, and the Level 3 player talks to these extensions that allow to integrate different terminal applications and terminal models. And then in a bit more detail, these extensions provide us a way on how in a test script we can use them to interact with the terminal or with other components like the robot. And so each extension provides a way on executing commands that it needs to do. For example, the UL extension, the UL brand test tool extension, provides a way on how to start the test case. The robot extension provides a way on how to tell the robot, for example, to enter a PIN or insert a card, and so forth. And so we can also have an OCR extension here, or an extension that reads a terminal log file to get some data. And so it's highly modular and can be used in many different use cases. In the Level 3 context, obviously the test data is stored in the brand test tool. And we use the UL automation interface to access this data and execute the tests. And what we actually do, or what the Level 3 player does, is shown in this screen here. So we create a configuration that defines how a test should look like in a particular setup with a particular terminal. So here in this configuration, for example, we define how a transaction can be started, and we provide like a template for how a test should look like. And then we access the BTT, and we merge up this information in the first step, which will create a number of test definitions, as many as you chose in the BTT, which can then be executed by the Level 3 player. So without further ado, I'm going to just continue to the demo. So I'm showing you how we can import those tests from the brand test tool. So I'm specifying a path here to this configuration file that I was talking about before, and I'm entering a path on where I want these tests to be created, and I'll just put the Explorer here so you can see what's actually happening on my disk. And then we have to choose the profile or the configuration that we're using in the Abrantix tool. Mine is at the moment just called import test. It could be any other configuration that you're using. And if I do get tests, it will spit out a list of all the different tests that are available for this configuration. So I'm just going to select 4 tests, 2 MasterCard, and maybe something Visa. These are Visa test cases. I'm going to give this a name. And so what actually is going to happen is this tool is going to import these test cases and create tests that are executable in an automated fashion with the level 3 player. So we're creating a test set with this selection of tests. You can select many more, but for the sake of simplicity and for time, just selecting 4 and importing those. And so when I hit import, it will start importing, and you will see some files coming up here in the Explorer. And you can also see in the brand test tool log that something is going on, and so this is going to take a while during this import, and you can see the status of each test will change here while it's running. So now the brand test tool has started this test, and the level 3 player up here is waiting for this information, and once it receives the information, it will create a test case on the disk here and say it's successful. So you can see now in here we now have a first test, and this is now repeated for each of these test cases. And once these tests have been created, they can be replayed all the time, and also when they're being played, again we access the UL brand test tool to actually perform the tests so that the correct tests are routed to the card, and I can show you that once this import has been finished. So now you can see this import was finished. We have a test set here on the disk that contains all or references all these tests, and the folder with all the tests inside. So I'm just going to stop this. Now we can open this test library. We create a test run, run 1. And because of the configuration that we specified during the import, the level 3 player will know what extensions that we need to use. So in this demo we're using obviously the robot and the UL brand test tool, and we're using a POS interface for to start transactions on the terminal that's called SIXML. So I'm starting all these environments. And once they're running, we can go to our library where we see all these tests that we just imported. So we can pull these over here. So now when you look at these tests, they show up with all their steps. So you see start a transaction, or starting a test case in the brand test tool, then start a transaction on the terminal, wait for the terminal to be ready to accept the card, insert the card, perform application selection and the PIN and so forth, and in the end send data back to the UL brand test tool. So I'm just gonna configure more log information. Just run this test. So now we can see in the log down here of the brand test tool again, starting this test case. You can see on the probe here it takes a while, but at some stage the card will be selected on the probe. Now it's selected, then we start a transaction and process the transaction. And in the end of the test, the data is getting sent back to the brand test tool, and the case is completed successfully. And you can see, for example, in this test case, the brand test tool asked to validate that the transaction was completed successfully, which is what we tell the brand test tool, which then gives a green tick on the test and means that the test has been successful. So yeah, this was a very high-level demo of the whole level 3 player. If you have any questions, please reach out to your Abrantix representative. We're always happy to help. Have a good day.